He thought he was untouchable, just another cop abusing his power. But when he arrested the wrong man, a man with the power to expose him, his entire world came crashing down. What happened next is a story of justice, corruption, and a downfall no one saw coming. And trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. Here's how it all unraveled. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Racism Watchdog for more powerful stories. Marcus Carter walked down a quiet suburban street, his polished dress shoes tapping against the pavement. It was late, and the glow of the streetlights cast long shadows across the road. Dressed sharply in a dark navy suit, he carried a warm leather briefcase in one hand, the other tucked in his coat pocket. His mind was consumed with his latest case, a high-profile corruption trial that could shake the city's power structure to its core. He barely noticed the police cruiser trailing behind him at first, but when it slowed to match his pace, that familiar flicker of annoyance sparked in his chest. Not fear, never fear, just an exasperated understanding. Here we go again. The red and blue lights flashed, washing the street in alternating hues. Instinctively, Marcus raised his free hand slightly, already knowing how this would play out. He wasn't about to take any chances. Not tonight. The car door opened, and two officers stepped out. Officer Derek Slater, a thick-set man in his mid-40s with a hardened demeanor, led the way. His face bore the smug confidence of someone who thought he had already won. Behind him, Officer Hale, younger and less certain, hesitated before following. His unease was apparent in the way his hand lingered near his holster, but never quite settled on it. Slater wasted no time. "What are you doing out here this late?" His tone wasn't questioning. It was accusatory. Marcus exhaled slowly, keeping his posture relaxed. "Heading home," he said evenly. "Is there a problem, officer?" Slater smirked, glancing at Hale before turning back to Marcus. "We got a report of a break-in nearby. You match the description." Marcus tilted his head. "And what exactly is that description?" Hale shifted uncomfortably, but Slater ignored the question. Instead, he nodded toward the briefcase in Marcus's hand. "What's in there?" Marcus tightened his grip on the handle. "Legal documents." Slater's smirk widened. "A lawyer, huh? That's convenient." Marcus wasn't in the mood for games. "If you have no probable cause, I'd like to be on my way." Slater didn't like that. With a quick motion, he snatched the briefcase from Marcus's hand, ignoring his protest. He flipped it open, rifling through neatly stacked papers, his expression darkening as he failed to find anything incriminating. "Looks like someone's trying a little too hard to look innocent," Slater muttered, snapping the briefcase shut. Marcus clenched his jaw. "This is harassment." Slater's eyes flashed with something almost gleeful. "That's so. Turn around. Hands behind your back." Marcus didn't move. "On what grounds?" Slater stepped forward, his smirk gone, resisting an officer. "Let's see what else we can add." Marcus stood firm, staring into Slater's eyes. He could feel his pulse in his ears, not from fear, but from anger, cold, burning anger. He knew how easily this could escalate, how quickly the wrong move could end everything. So he swallowed his pride, took a steadying breath, and turned around. The cuffs snapped too tight around his wrists. Slater's grip was rough as he shoved Marcus toward the police cruiser. Hale still hadn't spoken, but he reached for his radio. "Dispatch, we're bringing in a suspect," he muttered, eyes avoiding Marcus's gaze. Marcus sat in the back of the cruiser, the city lights reflecting off the cold metal bars separating him from the front seats. He wasn't afraid. He was furious. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The cold fluorescent lights of the precinct cast a sterile, almost eerie glow over the room. The air carries the faint scent of burnt coffee and sweat, mixing with the low murmur of officers typing reports and answering calls. The station is alive, but for Marcus Carter, it feels suffocating. He stands in the booking area, stripped of his belongings, wallet, phone, briefcase, all the markers of his professional identity reduced to nothing. Slater watches with a smirk as the officer on duty logs Marcus's possessions into a plastic evidence bag. He leans in, making a show of inspecting the briefcase. "Fancy paperwork," You a lawyer or something?" Marcus doesn't flinch. "Something like that." Slater chuckles, unimpressed. "Not anymore." He turns to the officer at the desk. "Burglary, resisting arrest, possession of stolen property." Hale, standing off to the side, shifts uncomfortably. His arms are crossed, his jaw tight. He isn't proud of what's happening, but he stays silent. Silence is complicity, and he knows it. As Slater types up the report, his voice is loud enough for Marcus to hear. "That's one more off the streets. Guy like this, walking around in a suit, thinking he's better than the rest, probably thought we wouldn't notice." Through the thin walls of his holding cell, Marcus hears laughter from the other officers. He sits on the hard bench, exhaling slowly. His mind isn't clouded by fear. He's dealt with power-hungry men like Slater before. But rage, that's harder to control. Marcus has spent years inside courtrooms dismantling corrupt men. But tonight, he's the one behind bars. He closes his eyes, centering himself. He knows his rights. He knows the system. He also knows this is bigger than him. When the officer comes to offer him his one phone call, Marcus doesn't hesitate. He dials Vanessa Cole, his assistant. "Vanessa," he says calmly, "we have a situation." She doesn't need more than that. "Where?" "Eastwood Precinct." There's a slight pause, then her voice turns razor sharp. "I'm on it." Marcus hangs up, a small smirk forming on his lips. Slater, passing by the holding cell, notices something funny. "Just thinking about how much paperwork you're about to deal with," Marcus replies. Slater scoffs. "You won't be laughing when you're in front of a judge." "Oh, I will be," Marcus assures him. "Trust me." Less than 2 hours later, chaos erupts at the precinct. A team of lawyers storms in, led by Vanessa. She doesn't waste time. She slams a folder onto the front desk, her voice ringing with authority. "I want Marcus Carter released immediately." The desk sergeant barely looks up. "And you are?" Vanessa leans forward. "The one who's about to make your department's worst nightmare go viral." She flips open the file. Inside, traffic camera footage proving Marcus wasn't near the crime scene. Timestamp video from a nearby coffee shop showing him ordering a drink at the exact moment of the supposed burglary. A copy of Marcus's ID and employment records, clearly labeling him as the state's chief prosecutor. The sergeant's face drains of color. The realization spreads like wildfire. The officers whisper among themselves, "The wrong man. Not just any man, the man." Hale looks physically ill, his hands resting on his belt as if he doesn't know what to do with them. Slater, however, doubles down. He steps forward, rolling his eyes. "This doesn't change anything. He fit the description." "He was wearing a suit," Vanessa snaps. "The suspect was in a hoodie." "Tell me how that's the same." Slater clenches his jaw. "He resisted." Vanessa glares at him. "You mean he questioned why he was being harassed?" The sergeant, realizing the gravity of the situation, takes a slow breath before turning to the officers. "Uncuff him." A moment later, Marcus steps out of the holding cell, straightening his sleeves like he was never there. Slater glares at him, but Marcus just smiles. "You should enjoy your badge while you still have it." Vanessa hands Marcus his briefcase. "Ready to go?" "Not yet," he says, his voice cool and measured. He turns back to Slater. "I'm pressing charges," Marcus states, his tone ice cold. "And I'm making sure this doesn't get buried." The precinct is silent. Slater stares at him, realizing for the first time that he might actually lose. Marcus walks out, knowing this is far from over. It's just the beginning. A week later, the courtroom is packed. Spectators, media, and legal professionals fill the room, their eyes fixed on the front. Whispers ripple through the crowd. This isn't just any trial. It's a reckoning. At the defense table, Officer Derek Slater sits stiffly, a smug expression plastered across his face. He leans back in his chair, exuding confidence. He still thinks he'll walk away unscathed. Officer Brian Hale, by contrast, is visibly tense. His eyes dart around the room, his hands clasped together tightly. He knows what's coming, and it terrifies him. The district attorney, Ellen Rhodes, steps forward. She has built her career on being tough on crime. But this case is different. She doesn't want to be here. She knows how bad this looks. She knows how damning the evidence is. But the wheels of justice demand motion, and she has no choice but to prosecute one of her own. Then the doors swing open. Marcus Carter walks in, shoulders squared, chin high. The murmurs rise to a roar. He moves with quiet confidence, unshaken, unbothered. He is not here as a victim. He is here as a force of reckoning. He is here to dismantle them. Marcus stands before the judge, unwavering. "Your Honor, I'll be representing myself." The judge nods. Marcus walks to the center of the courtroom and presses a button on the projector. A grainy black and white video flickers onto the screen, traffic camera footage from the night of his arrest. The timestamp reads 10:32 p.m. On the screen, Marcus is seen stepping out of a coffee shop, adjusting his coat, checking his watch, nowhere near the so-called crime scene. The room erupts with murmurs. The evidence is undeniable. Then, the next piece, security footage from a store down the street. Timestamp, 10:35 p.m. Marcus is seen walking calmly toward his apartment building, nowhere near any break-in. The murmurs grow louder. "These timestamps prove that I was not at the scene of any crime," Marcus states plainly. But let's not stop there. He presses another button. The next piece of evidence plays. Audio from the squad car. Slater's voice crackles through the speakers. "Make it look legit. No one will question it." Gasps fill the courtroom. The judge narrows his eyes. The jury leans forward. The reporters scramble to take notes. Ellen Rhodes pinches the bridge of her nose, furious. She knows what this means. She knows she's losing control of this case. Marcus lets the weight of the audio settle before he speaks. "This wasn't just a mistake," he says, his voice like steel. "This was a deliberate attempt to fabricate charges against an innocent man." The tension in the room is thick as Marcus turns to his final witness. "Officer Brian Hale, please take the stand." Hale swallows hard but obeys. He avoids Slater's glare as he walks to the witness box. Marcus approaches, his voice measured. "Officer Hale, you were present that night. Tell the court what really happened." Hale shifts uncomfortably, his fingers gripping the railing. Silence. Then he exhales sharply. "It wasn't right," he says, voice barely above a whisper. "There was no real evidence. Slater told me to go along with it. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't stop it." The courtroom explodes. Slater jumps to his feet. "You lying piece of..." The judge slams the gavel. "Order in the court." But it doesn't matter. The damage is done. As the judge prepares to issue a ruling, Marcus rises to his feet once more. His voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. "Your Honor, one more thing before you decide." The courtroom stills. He pulls out a folder and hands it to the judge. "This is my resume. Before these officers arrested me, before they fabricated charges against me, I was preparing for this week's trial." He lets the words settle before delivering the final blow. "You see, I'm not just any lawyer." Silence. Every ear is tuned in. Every camera is locked on him. "I am the Chief Prosecutor of this state." A collective gasp. Marcus's voice is ice cold now. "And I will not stand for this corruption, not in my office, not in my state, and not from those who took an oath to uphold the law." What happens next? Should Marcus press charges? Should Officer Hale be punished? Let us know in the comments. This isn't just a story. This is real life for too many people. It's time to stand up against injustice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Racism Watchdog for more powerful stories. Help us speak out. The fight isn't over.